Man, I am all over the place with the controls today. I hit
too many interfaces going on.
2 wrong buttons. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm tired.
Is that like the podcast host version of being like a Maryland player trying to shoot a 3? Just like, keep hitting the wrong buttons and just things are bouncing and moving all over the place, not doing what they're supposed to do.
I think my overall track record is pretty good, but today it's not. Actually, I do have kind of an issue with the StreamYard. I have had an issue getting us started sometimes. You're right about that.
Has it been like
it's since StreamYard?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's just a lot of buttons and moving parts, and
I'm intimidated by it. That's why I'm very happy I haven't been asked to like host by myself yet, because I don't know if I can handle all that.
It's a lot. Like sometimes I forget the little scroll at the bottom, like the thing on the bottom that has the stuff. Website and all the links, and I miss hit the button. One of the things is they have a button on here that when you log in, it automatically loops any audio you play, and you have to manually unselect that every time you come in. And I'm pretty good about it, but a couple times it's kept going. I'm like, fuck. Sorry, that wasn't quite an F-bomb.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm just tired. I'm tired. I'm annoyed about the basketball team. I'm looking forward to this weekend because I'm going down to Elon. So I don't know. My head's elsewhere, I guess.
It's funny. It's like now we're old enough now, and we've been almost doing this 10 years, right? So it pretty much every beginning of the show used to be like, oh, we did this fun thing on the weekend, or like, we saw this person we hadn't seen in a while and whatever. And now it's just like, I'm like, oh, I just got a root canal the other day, and that sucks. And, kids off at school, and he's being a pain in the butt. Like the scuttlebutt has changed significantly over the years. So that's kind of funny to me.
It's been 10 years. Can you believe that?
Well, I think we need to do some sort of 10-year like football show this year, because I think it was right after we hired the Goon, right? Was that 20 or no? That was been year 2 or 3 of the Goon. 14, fall of 14.
Who's the Goon? Oh, Rangoon.
Of course, Rangoon.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring back that nightmare if you'd exercised it already, but
I just didn't. I'm out of it, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm just gonna shut up.
You're not as out of it as Jeff has been talking with himself. His mic muted for the past 2 minutes, and now we've lost it.
Woo!
Let's go! You talk about technological genius right here. Just every time.
What's the show? This has become the new Walt's Beeps. Is Jeff's camera falling over?
I want to. We need to get like the background of what it actually looks like. He's got it like hanging from string from like the ceiling, or like leaning up against like 3 different books. Oh, and now he's just giving us this really kind of awkward stare. Oh, that's good.
There we go. All right, now I see it. I did that on purpose. I just do that to get some energy going in the show, get the laughs going.
It's good. It's good.
I like that. Yeah. Everybody's got their role here. Yeah.
It's needed, much needed.
What I was saying when I was stupidly muted is that I tweeted that the other day. I was ordering Chinese food and I saw crab rangoon, and I can never look at that word the same again. Like it will always make me think of Edsel. And it's hilarious because it's such a random thing. It made no sense whatsoever, but it was still just. I think it was just a coping mechanism for the fans at that point.
I don't even have any damn idea where it came from or who said it first or whatever, but it's just immediately hilarious and nonsensical, and to this day I just thinking about the Goon. Yeah. What's he up to these days?
You mentioned not a thing. I think he's done.
Yeah.
I think he's done working for the most part. But you mentioned
made millions.
Comment about root canals. I thought that was a good segue to the Rutgers game the other day.
Oh, I don't know. I think I enjoyed my root canal way more than that basketball game, honestly.
Before we do that, I wanted to announce who our guest was. Pretty interesting guest. We've had him before, but I'm excited to hear what he has to say. It's Brian Dohn, the national analyst for 24/7 Sports, kind of the biggest kind of insider expert for football recruiting at a national level. at 24/7 Sports, and so it'd be interesting to get his take on Maryland's recruiting and all those kind of things. And I know there are a lot of people on the board who have these conspiracy theories about the way the rankings work, and I got your back. I'm going to give him the opportunity to address it. So there you go. I will ask him about it. I'm going to be more political than say certain people on the board.
The way they
Stop
might put
screwing
it.
Maryland over.
Yeah. But yeah.
How much money are you getting paid from James Franklin?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna ask him, about player ratings, movement, and stuff like that. So yeah, that'll be good.
Football's good. I mean, if we'll obviously have plenty to doom scroll over when it comes to basketball. But I mean, the football recruiting class ended up pretty nice. But,
okay.
Are we just going to you want to roll right into it, or
no? But if Locksley is known as a recruiter, when you end up 39th nationally, that's not what you want. It's not as good as what you want.
Well, what's Maryland's program ranking right now to you? If you just talk about where Maryland is as a football program, are they 39th, or are they better than that, or are they worse than that?
I think they're mid-30s. I think it's probably about what that is, but he's known as a recruiter, not as an in-game coach. If you're known as a recruiter.
The previous year's results were largely without NIL. This was the first cycle where NIL was really a major factor and the money was really flying.
Well, that's not good, but maybe that's why. Good. But
it's going to require some adjustment. As I reported on the site, I think there are some good things happening with the NIL program. I don't think that they're obviously they're not Ohio State. Like Ohio State is ridiculous. They went on a shopping spree this spring and just bought all these amazing transfers. It's not like that, obviously, but I think the situation's improved to where you're able to really compete, at a good, probably higher level than 39th overall. It's just improved fairly recently. So I do think NIL was somewhat of an issue, but yeah, you can't have a class like that often where you are, I think, they get 2 of the top 25 in state, which is it's always been hard for them to keep.
Didn't it end up being 3 after the
Humes? Yeah. That's a good catch up. And that was a good get late in the game.
Really good.
Four-star corner, top uncommitted cornerback in the country, Kevin Humes from St. Francis. Got him at the last minute. They feel like he can play right away next year, which is big because they don't have a single proven cornerback on the roster, basically. So, but yeah, I think it'll improve this cycle would be my guess, but you never know.
Well, as Paul's his nickname for this show is that he is contractually obligated to talk about Maryland basketball. Why don't we make him do that?
Oh boy,
you and me will just go play video games or something. He can just do like a little soliloquy.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to do that. That's just going to end up in being like 3 minutes of loud cursing and throwing my computer against the wall.
Yeah, take that back.
Before you do that, I started watching the game and I watched to the 4-minute timeout. And when
you have to be more specific about which of the soul-crushing losses you're speaking to, Larry. There were 2 of them.
Rutgers, because you can lose at Michigan State, and that's
not if you wanted to get in the tournament.
Not if you want to get in the tournament, but like you can lose at Michigan State, and that's not embarrassing. That's not.
It's expected.
It's okay. You lose at home to Rutgers when Juju threw the ball out of bounds right before the 4th-minute timeout. I was like, I can't watch it. I literally stopped watching.
Yeah, I think
I can't do that. It's making me so angry.
And you're one of the more positive people that I know, and obviously we have our own little text chain going, and a lot of times we'll pipe up to each other in the middle of a game, and sometimes it'll be great, sometimes it won't. But like when Larry is just like, I cannot watch this game, something is terribly wrong. I mean, I don't know. Everything's already been said. I mean, it was nice to have that little bit of hope for a minute there that they might be coming together. Things might be working out a little bit, not just with being able to shoot threes a little bit better, but it felt like the freshmen were maybe starting to make that turn where the game slowed down for them a little bit. starting to get more of a juju that reminds you of the second half of last season and not what we've seen, with the inconsistency this year. But I mean, at Michigan State, it felt like the second Julian got that second really soft foul call in the first minute of the game. I was like, all right, turn it off. It's over. Just what are we doing here? You can't.
Yeah. If Jameer Young's not shooting it well, you're screwed, basically.
Yeah,
That's pretty much it.
Right. I mean, it's become pretty much a two-man team with what obviously Dante's been very good too. I don't want to short him because he's earned that. But you need Jameer to go off for 25 a game against a decent team, and that's just asking too much right now, I think.
Yeah. And he's exhausted.
Yeah, he's clearly beat up, and you don't know, but you worry you would have a situation similar to last season where he really tailed off towards the end of the season. I think just because he was beat up and he was playing too many minutes and just expected to do too many things. And when you're not getting Reese producing at the kind of all Big Ten level you expect, and I think against Rutgers, I don't remember if it's Rutgers or Michigan State, but the two freshmen I had 35 minutes, 0 points, and 7 turnovers.
Yeah, that's it, really. I mean, Reese has not made the same kind of progression that he made last year. So a lot of people are, he's not getting hammered by any stretch, but people are talking about him being disappointing or this or that. And he has not been as consistent as you want. The biggest, lack of progression has been scoring wise. He's down from 60%, 61%, which I think was 4th highest in the season all time at Maryland, to 51, which is still healthy. It's not bad. He's at 13 a game. You would have liked him to be at 16. Otherwise, though, last I checked, he was 2nd in the conference in rebounding and 3rd in blocks. So he's probably a second-team all-conference player, even despite the little inconsistencies, I would say. Even though, we watch him on a regular basis, we see all his warts. So sometimes it's hard,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but so, I mean, how hard is it to get that kind of production out of Jameer Young, 20-plus a game, including 25 a game on the road, and then have a big man who is 2nd in the conference? The only guy ahead of him is Zach Edey, who's a legendary, not just a star, an all-time, basically all-time legend. That's the only one, and he's only behind 2 guys in blocks. To get that kind of season from those two, and a decent season from Dante Scott. He hasn't been a star. He hasn't been as consistent as you want, but he had a pretty good
solid,
stretch.
very good college player.
I mean, he's a solid player. He had
what is he doing? 12 or 13 a game too, and 5 and 5,
and their most reliable 3-point shooter for most of the season too. So it's just amazing to think how lacking the rest of your cast has to be to have those 3 guys doing those things we just said and still be struggling and averaging so few points. It's almost impossible.
And knowing that you could lose, you're definitely losing 2 of those guys and potentially 3, depending on the way it falls out after the season.
The drop off, usually your 4th scorer isn't a great score and your 5th scorer isn't, but the drop off from those 3 to then Geronimo and DHS scoring wise is just so enormous. And this is all very obvious, but that pretty much illustrates why the season has not gone as well as expected.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find any possible inkling of hope. I even went to the analytics sites. KenPom has him at 59 and Torvik has him at 69. But then
59 is still 59, awesome. You can see the bubble off in the distance.
Yeah. Well, at Torvik, they have he has them listed as the 28th team out right now. And I played around with it's a team cast where you can simulate the final games and stuff. If they win all 8, they'd be an 8 seed according to his team cast. If they win
6 and 2 is probably the best realistic maybe possibility. What about 6?
I'm getting there. If they win 7, but the loss is at Wisconsin, they're the very last team in the tournament, in the last 4 in. If they win 7, but they beat Wisconsin and say they lose one of the other road games like Rutgers and Penn State, they jump into the last 4 buys. If they win 6, they're out, and they need to win in the tournament. But with 6, you can do it with a good tournament run.
A certain line from Dumb and Dumber comes to mind.
No, I'm Paul's shaking his head, but I'm telling you this.
No, I'm not shaking my head at you. It's just like
it's not possible. It's not happening.
It's not happening. And if it did, I still think the committee is going to look at that non-conference strength of schedule and those bad losses and just be like,
well, two things. One, it's a hugely disappointing season when Larry is saying this at this point, that if they will go 7-1, they'll be the 20th team on the bubble, or 6-2, whatever. And I'm thinking 20th on the bubble, actually. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can write it.
We can work with that. We can workshop that.
How can I write that? Yeah, that's better than I thought. And the other thing, as I was saying to you guys, is like, it's getting hard to find stuff to write about because now everybody's given up on the team basically, which is understandable. Or actually, the other thing I was going to say is that it's amazing how they have not been able to string wins to even a team that like them that's mediocre or struggling or whatever. There's usually that one little hot streak, even fluky little winning streak during the season, even for non-tournament teams. And they just don't have that in their DNA. They haven't had a single run like that all season, except for a few wins in a row against low major, teams back in the non-conference schedule. They don't have that in them. So like to see them to even win 3 in a row would be beating a lot of odds. So, I'm not breaking in on any news when I say 7-1 is fairly unlikely.
Yeah, they can't win any close games either. I think that's, if you want to look
at
the story of the season.
Right.
I mean, they've lost 6 or 7 games within 5 points. That's not to say they're a good team that's just unlucky. They are not a good team that is also unlucky. But I think that the idea that, when you have a big man of Julian Reese's capability and you need that close bucket under a minute, under 2 minutes, or you put him on the line, he's not making the free throws, or it's at the end of the game when, maybe Jameer has already got 28 in the game, but he's just gassed and you're asking him to get to the hole again or hit a clutch 3. Like it's just, and there's just nobody else who is able to do it. Dante, obviously, again, at times has been a very good piece this year. And what I think maybe this team would have needed if the other parts of the team were at that level, but they're just not. Geronimo's not. Long has been a good guy off the bench, but you never want him, a guy like that, to be more than that piece. And then the 2 freshmen, man, it's just not doing it. And that sucks. And I feel bad for them because in a lot of ways they shouldn't really be put in this position to be expected to have to put up a combined 20 points a game, in 30, 35 minutes a game. That's unrealistic to expect non-stud, legit freshmen to come in and do. And yes, DHS could be argued to have been one of those guys. Just he was ranked
he was ranked like one. He just didn't turn out to be quite on that level at this point.
Right, and even so, we're talking about, what was he, 35th or something in the country? This was not like a blue chip go into the league, but certainly there were plenty of people that thought that he would walk in and be a pretty ready-made college player, but he can't shoot ball.
I remember concerns about him being a one and done too.
Yeah, yes. There were several people, scouts, who said it. We wrote that story a couple times over the summer about people saying that. It's one of the biggest gaps that I can recall between a reputation and a player. I'm not trying to bash the kid, obviously, and he's still got some good tools. He's big. He's a good defender. I think he's got a chance to eventually become a good player, solid guy, but just not ready. The confidence has looked very low for most of the season. So much hesitation.
It seems like as soon as he like if he gets a couple buckets early, you can see him start to put it together. But the second he makes a dumb turnover or dribbles ball out of bounds, you can just watch his confidence level. Yeah. Totally.
He gets down on himself. He starts doing all this stuff.
Yep. And I feel for him. I mean, I want those guys. I still believe in those two. I think they should stick around. I hope they do. And I hope I hope the game slows down. If for DHS especially, it feels like a game slowing down issue. Like he's just trying to do too much and it's not feeling natural. And he's not a good enough shooter to be able to buy himself, that little extra space to be able to get to the hole. With Kaiser, I think he has all the makings of a good shooter. Just they're not falling. The couple times they do, you watch his entire game fill out. It all matters. He hits one or two of those things. You feel like, okay, well, now you're starting to see it. So I don't feel like, if I'm blaming them, I'm not blaming them for being who they are. I'm blaming the coach, and in college also, who is also the GM who puts this roster together, expecting them to be able to do that right off the bat. And them not being able to do that is just as big a reason why this team is not played to its capabilities as anything else. And
and then
that's not their fault.
Yeah, and then behind them, when you look at those guys, 7, 8, 9, I like Jahari Long. I've said that a million times, but he's not a huge offensive player. Otherwise, I think Geronimo has a good role, as a energy defensive guy. He gets like 3 blocks every game, but he is who he is at this point offensively. He's not going to create baskets. Really, that's not his game. And
so he needs to be your 7th or 8th guy, or your first big off the bench. If he could be that, play that role on a good team. But
be a boom type.
Yeah, or like somebody said, be a better Emilian. I think he absolutely would be a better Emilian, but he got to have the starter in front of him.
Yeah,
who he can play. When you're asking him to come in and play a role he's not good enough to play, that's not his fault. It's not his fault. I'm not blaming the players here, man.
The 3-point shooting, even the bad, it's kind of like the winning streak thing I said, where even bad or mediocre teams, usually just because the season's 30 games long and that's the way sports work, they have that one streak. You would think that usually also happens with shooting, but I think there was one game maybe where they were like 14 of 28 or something like that, and it was like, this is the breakout game, but there has not been a fluky hot shooting streak at all, which is almost impossible.
Yeah, I think Nebraska at home, maybe they shot really well. There was like one more of them, but it never stuck, right? It was always just kind of fluky, statistical noise, and it's just really disappointing to me, because you brought Jameer back and he's having this kind of all-world year, and it just feels like you're wasting it, and that just really sucks for him, for us, for everybody. I mean, you could be talking about a kid who, if this was a good team, could be in the conversation for the Cousy Award for a first or second team All-American. Like, he's having that kind of year if he had any support whatsoever, and he's just doing it on his own. It's ends up being like a Stoglin year that we'll all kind of joke about, 10 years from now, but it just feels like a real missed opportunity.
Yeah, it feels exactly like Stoglin in that was Turge's first year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feels just like that.
Well, because you said 6 wins, I played with the team cast to figure that out. 6 wins plus 1 win in the Big Ten tournament. Makes them the first team out of the tournament, according to the team cast. So they're right, literally on as close to the bubble as you can get.
That would probably be the most Maryland thing to happen at this point, wouldn't it? For them to do like the full-on February Maryland tease.
No. What's going to happen is they're going to win like 7 in a row, 6 in a row,
and then lose.
And they'll lose one,
out,
and lose 2, lose that, or go 1-1, and so they'll be in great shape going into the Big Ten tourney. Just need to this and that, and then you lose in the first round to like Minnesota.
Yeah. 2 wins and 6-2 plus 2 wins in the tournament. Last 4 buys, they get a buy. So there you go. That's what the team cast says. If you're looking for any kind of reason to have some hope, and John Alton in the chat says every team has bad losses. The bubble is full of shit teams this year.
Yeah, they don't have good wins though.
Yeah,
they have bad losses and a lack of good wins.
They have Illinois. That's the best one, but that was without Shannon.
And then what's the best one after that? Nebraska? Who am I forgetting?
Nebraska and Iowa. Iowa, maybe?
Yeah, Iowa, another bubbly-ish
in the average year, in the typical year, those are going to be like your 8th and 9th best wins.
Well, if they do go on that run, then they'll have a bunch of wins against solid teams, tournament teams. Northwestern's coming in. they have a chance at Wisconsin if they win some games in the Big Ten tournament.
They would have to win at Wisconsin, and they have to beat Illinois at home, and they'd have to do some weird shit. I mean, it's possible. Again, you can, like we said last week, when they have played well, you can see the machinations of a potentially decent team, but then they go and it just kind of
Rutgers.
They just get beat up at Michigan State and thank the refs for taking Julian out of the game immediately. And then you lose to Rutgers at home. I don't care. I like Picciol. He's a good coach. I know they've obviously not the Rutgers of old, but you can't lose to Rutgers at home ever.
We got Doan coming up in about 3.5 minutes. So we're going to give you those 3.5 minutes, Jeff, to give us the weekly Dairy Queen update. Go ahead.
Really not a whole lot new. I posted a couple things last week about what I was hearing about Maryland and their chances. Still feel like they're very much alive, despite what most people assume. Maybe I'll be proven to be like Pollyanna about that. We'll see. But otherwise, there's no news. He hasn't said anything publicly in forever. The guy never talks. So it's one of the quietest 5-star recruitments I can ever recall.
What about anyone else? No one else in this class that for this year. It's all going to be transfers, but then I guess 2025 is kind of heating up.
Yeah, 2025, they've got a pretty good list, but you need somebody to crack the seal and go ahead and commit, get some momentum going. The guy who I've mentioned, obviously, who they want to be that early commitment, get everybody else to jump on board is Cam Ward from Largo. I actually just got a text about Mike Jones and Greg Manning are at his game tonight. So he's, that's what they view, who they view as the big domino, but he started to blow up. He's got a lot of, big time schools coming after him. I guess Michigan State was in to see him this week. So it's kind of funny because they've never, that I recall, really recruited the DMV. All of a sudden they're recruiting Cam Ward and they're recruiting Jordan Scott, another Maryland prospect from Reston, Virginia. So there's there's been several visits we've reported on and several recruits who they've really been prioritizing, but there's no known impending commitments at the moment.
Izzo smells blood.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. I can't remember a single, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, local guy who's gone out there, but you got Tom Izzo, a legend, coming in for you. That's tough to beat.
Well, and that's the thing too. Cam Ward is one of those guys, that's a pass-fail recruitment. I mean, you have to get him. You just have to. I know he's not the level of a Derek Queen in terms of recruit, but he's just the type of local kid who's got that Pied Piper attitude. He loves the school. He loves the area. He wants to be here. He's clearly good enough to play here. Man, you just got to get him. You just have to. He's
the basketball version of Malik Washington in football, who they want to come in. They know that all these other players respect him and think if they come in with him, they can do big things. And the whole local angle, home DMV pride that they've been trying to employ for what feels like a century. So those are in football, it's Malik Washington, basketball, Cam Ward. Those are the two local guys who they desperately want and who they think will start a movement.
And we have just been joined by Brian Dohn, so I will add him to the chat. There he is. I said it correctly, Brian Dohn.
What is going on, gentlemen?
What's up, Brian?
Hey,
how you
good.
doing, man?
How are you?
Living a dream. You guys?
Hey, are you Jeff's boss?
No one is Jeff's boss other than the missus, is my guess.
So since you're Jeff's boss, are we allowed to ask anything we want, or do we have to tread lightly? Yeah. How does that work here?
Listen, you can ask whatever you want, but I work for Jeff. I'm here to help Jeff. He's not here to help me. And this is my help now. We get you talk away from, I guess, basketball.
Yes, thank you for that, by the way.
Oh, man.
Yeah. We did go through that. We're sort of lamenting the end of the season here, unless
we had to eat our Brussels sprouts first before we got to the fun part.
Oh, and Dohn, you guys don't know this, but he's a Rutgers guy, so it's his fault that they lost the other day.
Listen, man,
I don't think it's his fault.
I will say this because I've spent part of my career covering UConn, covering UCLA also. So I've seen really good basketball. I don't really see that out of the Big Ten right now.
No, it's
No,
rough.
It's not.
It's rough across the board, even getting out of our backyard.
There are some positives happening at Maryland, and that's coming from the football side. 3 good seasons, and just finished up recruiting cycle with a couple of surprises at the end for Maryland there. Finished ranked 39th. What's your take on the class overall, and what kind of the players in general, and how Locksley did for this cycle?
Yeah, I think first of all, you look at it, and if you go back to the the Etzel years, and if you sat here and said Maryland's going to be a bowl team every year, and be in some really good games that you'd like to see them win maybe a few more when they're close with Ohio State and all that stuff. I think if you go back 8 or 9 years, everybody signs up for that, right? And so I think in one regard, Locksley is, he's had success, and now with that, people want more, which is understandable. So I think you have to give credit there first. And, I was able to see them live late November. I went to one of their games. I was amazed at the talent. Like, their talent was really, really good across the field. And how does that factor into all the recruiting stuff? Because if you look at this class, there's a lot of really good talent. And I think sometimes things get overlooked when you're recruiting Maryland public schools, because everybody from across the country knows to go into Good Counsel, to DeMatha, to St. John's, Gonzaga, wherever, right? St. Francis. But to be able to find some of the kids that they found in this class who are really good athletes, I like that. I think, maybe these kids, I love the Powell Watson kid. Maybe kids like him don't get there and explode right away onto the scene. It's more developmental, but they're really good players. But one of the things that really stands out is I think what they take 7 offensive linemen, and that is a spot where they will have to continue to really mine for that. I know for the last few years, they've been trying to identify offensive line talent, and they've had some success with some of the guys doing really well there. And I think for me, that's kind of the next step is getting some more offensive linemen that maybe are ready to play in year 2 and not so far down the line.
Brian, you mentioned Jamari Powell-Watson, the receiver from Baltimore. Who else do you like in their class?
But, there's a lot of them. And the good thing is I've seen a lot of them play. Like, I was a huge DeJuan Williams fan. He tore his ACL last spring, so he didn't get a chance to get on the field. But, give him a little bit of time. I was a huge DeJuan Williams fan. And you're talking about a guy who ran blazing speeds, right? I mean, he put it on film, or whatever you want to call it, on tape. I think he was like a 6'6" or sub 6'6" kid in the 55 meters last year. I like him a lot. I do. One kid I really like, I like Braden Lee, but I think for him, the corner out of Flowers, saw him play, really good baller, athlete, just has to get bigger. He's going to take a year or 2 in the strength room to really be able to do that, to be able to handle some of the bigger receivers that he plays against. Now, I went and watched them play against Wise, which is the huge game, down there. And I say down there because I'm based in New Jersey, but it's the huge game. And when the game was on the line, that's who they went to. And he was making plays in the fourth quarter on offense. And so he has that. Kayshawn Flowers is a kid, out of Archbishop Spalding. I went and watched them play, and runs well, has a great frame. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to continue to add strength, especially to the upper body. But he brings some flexibility as an outside linebacker and maybe an edge guy. I mean, like I said, they have some really good players across the boards on this stuff. Kevin Humes, who they just picked up, they just signed. He was a class of 25 kid, decides to reclass going to 24. And he was a product of, hey, we're going to go into the 24 class. And all these schools said, come visit. And all of a sudden spots dried up, and Maryland was smart enough to say, hey, listen, we'll make sure we have room for you. And I'm not saying they still had a really good chance if he stayed in the 25 class, but he's one of those guys that's kind of sneaky good, runs well, long, athletic corner. I like him a lot. And you hear me keep going through it. And Lloyd Irvin is a kid I really like. And Jeff, you and I spoke about Lloyd a few times, and he did not play as a senior. He had to get some things in order, and he really wanted to focus on getting better. But if you go back and look at his tape from the 2022 season, he was really good, really athletic, long. I was with him. Again, he's going to have to get in the weight room. He's a narrow kid and thin, but just give it time, and they're going to develop. And that's kind of one of the things that with Maryland, I know everybody gets excited. Are they getting the 5 stars, or maybe the best kid doesn't stay home? To be honest, and I know I'm going on a little bit, but to be honest, if Locks can get that team to maybe the 9 win or figure out a way, especially with the way the schedule's changed now, where you don't have that gauntlet of Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan every year, if he can figure out a way to get to 9 or 10 wins, win one of those games, in against a marquee team, maybe some of those kids will say, okay, I'm going to jump on board, because this is not 10 years ago in recruiting where kids want to go build, help build a program who are really 5-star and high 4-star kids. They're all, a lot of them, I should say all, a lot of them are going elsewhere because it's not in vogue to go build something anymore.
So, Brian, I'm curious, and I know you're not directly involved in this, but I'm sure you can't avoid it really. How do you think that NIL has affected freshman recruiting? Do you feel like it's affected that directly for once you even get to the Maryland level of teams? I mean, obviously, I'm sure the top 10, 20, 25 level teams, they're going to be paying pretty much everybody. When you get to our level, are you seeing a lot of NIL for true freshmen as well? Or is a lot more of that going, or seem like it's more going towards player retention more than actually trying to get kids to come in?
Yeah, it's mostly player retention, because now there's some instances where maybe you get a kid who's highly rated and you figure something out. But it's mostly player retention for a place like Maryland and a place like, Rutgers or Illinois or, Northwestern. One of the things that's interesting is Minnesota lost a lot of really good players to the transfer portal the last few years, which is kind of why they dipped. And it comes back to the player retention idea. Now, it's never going to get cleaned up because, before you had NIL, kids were going places, if they got stuff, they got stuff. I think it's been documented in the past that maybe that's happened once or twice.
I refuse to believe that there were shenanigans.
So, I think, no matter what happens, outside of a CBA where all of a sudden it could become a legal issue and not just a moral and ethical issue. But I think you hit on it. It's retention. There's not a lot of kids that are going to command the big money out of high school. And, if you're a program, you really have to be careful, because if you're going to tell a kid who's never played college football and hasn't proven anything, hey, here's $500,000, man, you do that a few times and all of a sudden those kids don't play. Those people funding those NILs are going to really pay attention to it. And so I think from that aspect, it's something to keep an eye on. And look, you have to be smart. It's roster management. And I still think, one of the things I looked at with this class, right, I think Maryland right now has 6 transfers. They got one they really needed in the quarterback, MJ Morris, right, who at one point at NC State, I kept hearing future, and then there was some injury stuff. And, it went south for him there off the, when I say off the field, I don't mean like he behaved poorly or anything. It wasn't working in terms of clicking with the offense and all that other stuff. And then he decided, hey, I'm going to transfer. Let me protect the year. But they got him. I think they got 6 kids in the portal. And so they didn't go heavy in the portal. And I think that's the right way to go. When you see teams that are going deep into the portal, and we'll bring up NC State again because I was doing stuff on them on signing day. I think NC State brought in 36 new kids, 12 transfers, 8 receivers between portal and signing. That just tells you that it's an unhealthy receiver room or whatever it is. So for me, if this is, maybe Maryland adds another one after the spring, but I kind of like the idea that they have some talent inside the organization. And I'll share this with you. And I think I told Jeff this during one of our phone conversations. Maryland lost a kid in the portal that people were like, oh, I can't believe they lost him, because he was a kid who developed and was doing well. But they have kids behind him that are ready for their turn and who have higher ceilings. And so if the player stayed at Maryland, maybe somebody else goes in the portal. So I think there's different ways also that you have to look at the portal when it comes to recruiting.
We're speaking with Brian Dohn, national analyst for 24/7 Sports. And as that national analyst, you get a lot of flack. We've seen it on the Maryland message board from time to time. And so I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of it. You get people talking about player rankings. I'm gonna get crushed if I don't ask you this. So I'm giving you the chance.
No, I don't care if you can ask. I'll be as honest as I can be. I mean, I'm always honest.
The player rankings, you have an example of like Maryland recruiting a receiver from Alabama, and he's a 3-star guy, flips to Alabama, and all of a sudden he's a 4-star. And people talk about, does the school where they go, how much does it impact the ratings? And do players that go to schools like Alabama or Ohio State or Penn State or what have you, do they get a bump? Does someone who commits to Maryland, do they get lowered? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, no, it doesn't happen. There's the problem that the industry faces is sometimes it looks that way just because of timing, right? And one of the big things is you don't just say, okay, we're moving this kid right here. Maybe a kid flips to an Alabama who just put out his tape. And so now all of a sudden that stuff's out there. Or maybe he just ran an unbelievable time in the 100 and that speed marker changes. And we don't just take a kid and be like, oh, okay, we need to turn around and all of a sudden increase his ranking because he committed or drop his ranking somewhere. It's new data. And a lot of times that new data just winds up coming up the same time a decision is made. And then you look kind of late in the cycle. Why is this kid here? Or oh boy, all of a sudden this school got a bunch of bumps. Well, it's because as we lead up to signing day, like we didn't touch rankings this year, the 24 class, we barely touched them in the month of November and early December because waiting for a big release about a week before signing day. And so that takes place. And so wait a minute, this kid who was committed to maybe a mid-level Power 5 who flipped in early November is jacked up near signing day. Well, yeah, because that's when we got around to it. Now, I'll say this, and I say this all the time, and all I can do is say it's my belief. It's the way I do things, and if people want to believe it, they can. If they don't, there's nothing I can really do to convince them. But here's the best way I can put it, right? And so we'll talk about a kid like Kashawn Flowers, who I like a lot, who was under 4-star consideration for us. Now, these are kids I have relationships with, so I don't just write about them once. Like, I know a lot of these kids since their freshman or sophomore years. And for me, or anybody, at least with 247, to sit there and say, well, we don't care what he does, it's about the school, is a disservice to him. It's disrespectful to him. And we wouldn't want to be treated a different way. If he viewed us saying, well, I'm just going to generalize everything and talk to somebody else instead of you because I think maybe I'd get a higher profile out of it. I don't, that's not how this stuff works. So, I remember talking to Keyshawn Flowers. I was at his school and he's like, hey, what do I have to do a 4-star? I'm like, look, tape. We'd love to get some speed timers on you. Do you play other sports? So I have to, I don't have to, but I find I should. If the kids ask, I tell them about it and what our process is. And kids 99.9% of the time are awesome about it. They get it. They understand once they get to college, none of it really matters anyway. But, the idea that you're just sitting there and flipping a kid because of where he goes to school is, to me, asinine. Now, what you do sometimes, you say, okay, this school develops quarterbacks really well, and they're taking this kid that maybe we're missing something. What has changed that, if this is like one of the elite quarterback schools, what has changed? And you do some research there. And I think I know with Maryland, with certain kids, with skill guys, especially receivers and some corners, if I don't think, if I'm like, well, geez, I was a little surprised they took him. Well, then I do the research to find out what went into them either changing their mind on the kid or what did they see in the kid that maybe I didn't see the first time. And that goes on constantly. And I think it's my whole issue with saying a kid is, and Jeff, you and I have had this discussion many a times. It looks bad sometimes when it happens. There's no disputing that. No disputing that. But I find it, if we did business that way, that would be so disrespectful to these kids who are just absolutely working their butts off to get ready for college, to be the best that they can be, to listen, we all have egos, some to different levels and all that, but they're not working to be a no-star. They're working, they want to be ranked as high. And I get that. That's human nature, and that's awesome for them. But it would just be disrespectful to the kids if we sat there and said, well, we got to bump this kid because he's going up. I mean, because he's going to another school. That's not why you put a kid up. I mean, it's just, now you can disagree and say, well, that's BS. It doesn't happen. That's fine. I can't change your mind on that. I can just tell you where I come from on it.
Can I ask a quick corollary? Just and you kind of got into it a little bit. If you see a kid like we use Kobe Prentice as one of the examples, because Locks plucked him out of Alabama when he had no offers and he was kind of like a low 3-star, ends up committing to Bama, 4-star guy, whatever. When you see a kid like that, say, pick up some committable offers from a couple big programs, is that the type of thing that might make you think, what are they seeing in this kid that I'm not seeing? I'm going to go back and take another look. And is that a thing that you guys are doing somewhat constantly, or because you're not just making an evaluation in like May and then just leaving it alone for 6 months, right?
No, you don't. You never. I mean, I would never do that. Those are great questions because when all of a sudden there's a run on offers, it's like I said. Well, what happened? What happened now that there was that run on offers? If it's the off season, did a school go watch him play basketball and he was unbelievable? Did he put up a huge track time? Like you look at DeJuan Williams, we had him as a 3-star. He put up a freaking great track time last winter. And I remember calling Andrew Ivins and being like, yo, we got to take a look at this kid again. Look at this time. And so, yes, that is always going on. And I think if you are not doing that, then A, you're not doing your job. And B, again, you're doing a disservice to these kids because you always want to find out as much as you can. And so I think that's something to really look at. And then, if there's really nothing going on, like here we are in February, right? Let's say some kid all of a sudden picks up 6 offers that are legit offers. It's not just that, some school popped in and the coach said, offer these 27 kids, and he did. Let's say a kid picks up a couple legit offers. Well, then you start looking around. What information do these schools have that maybe we didn't have or we overlooked? And so there's so much that goes on just behind the scenes with trying to find out information and get intel from that standpoint. But I think, one of the things that always get asked when I would do Q&As on the board is, this Joe Smith going to get reevaluated? Yeah. I mean, everybody's getting reevaluated. Now, you're not going to change every kid because I'm going to hope that when we rank kids in the spring, we have a pretty good feel for where they are. And if we're redoing every kid, then we're not very good on those initials. But, there's a lot of things that change. I mean, I can speak for just experience. And I never realized this until I watched my older kid go through it, who's now 18 and a freshman in college, and he plays lacrosse. And I'm watching him run as a junior. And he's a big kid, man. He's 6'2", 6'3", so he's big. And I'm watching him run as a junior, and then like his senior year, all of a sudden he had a different stride. He was faster, he was more explosive, he was all that stuff. And it made me realize that some of these kids mature at different times with their bodies. And so that's why sometimes you see this big change in rankings, maybe from a May to a September or October deal.
Brian, I'm going to ask you about a specific player. We were talking about him earlier. He's the guy that Maryland views as like the potential centerpiece of the movement toward the next level. and that's Malik Washington. What do you think about his recruitment, and what do you think, how good of a prospect is he?
Yeah, I think we'll start with the recruitment. I think that's a little easier. I think Maryland is in it. I think, the two schools I really look at with him are Maryland and Penn State. Virginia Tech, yes, and there's going to be some others. He likes Oregon a lot. He's been out there. I always got the sense Malik was more of a closer to home kid. He really is tight with some of the kids at Maryland. Maryland has a good relationship with Archbishop Spalding. One of the things to watch if you're a Maryland fan is Penn State has one quarterback committed. They're taking two if they can. They're in it heavy for an in-state kid like Matt Zollers, who is, I think he's a top 10 quarterback for us, if I'm remembering right. Everybody can see how old I am, so maybe my memory goes a little. But, so keep an eye on what Penn State does with that. But so from that standpoint, right now, I view it as a really Penn State-Maryland battle, and I'm not saying that's what it's going to come down to. I'm just saying where it is right now. Now, as a player, I love him. I went and watched him play in the championship game back in November. He is poised. He's athletic. He throws a really nice ball. He has arm strength. I mean, and one of the things we judge with rankings is he also plays basketball. When you watch some of the stuff he does on the basketball court with his explosiveness and his movements, it just tells you how loose of an athlete he is and how explosive he is, which is great. And I think he's a smart kid who understands the role of a quarterback is not just to throw the ball, but it's to lead, it's to keep everybody happy. He does not shy away from the big moment, and the physical tools are all there. And Joe, I think I've told you this before. When I saw him at Elite 11 out at State College, I think it was like last May, I thought from just that day, for any class, he was the quarterback I was most impressed with. And wherever he's ranked now, I don't really worry about it too much because we're really going to dive into the 25 class in the spring. But he, to me, I don't remember Maryland getting a quarterback of his caliber out of high school. I'm sure going back I could, but in the last 10 years or so, and I'm sure somebody could refresh my memory very quickly on the message board if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think the world of him. And in addition to the physical talent, I think he has everything you want from makeup, character, leadership, poise, maturity, all that stuff.
So, Brian, last question. You've been great with your time here.
Okay.
So I'm curious what it was like trying to do your job during COVID and how you felt that affected the way you guys were able to do that. And then whether you feel like you've now gotten through that in terms of evaluating current kids.
So two things. So when you're talking about COVID, you're not talking about the covering. You're just talking about the evaluation.
Yeah, just mainly be trying to evaluate kids who maybe only played a couple high school games or no high school games. Like that had to be brutal on you guys.
It is. Again, I should come on more because you guys have some really good questions that aren't just the typical, where do we stand with this guy? Right. And so I kind of like the depth that you can get into with these conversations. Right. And so with that, it was really difficult because you had places that I don't even know if they knew COVID was going on and they're playing games and all that stuff. And then you had places that didn't play, like New England at all. New Jersey had a shortened schedule. Maryland, it depended what school you were at on how many you were playing, and some played in the spring. And so it became really difficult to get all the measurables that you wanted in terms of speed markers. There wasn't much film out there. So, I remember, and I think it was this time was when Cam Edge was going. I think Cam Edge was right in this kind of area. And I remember him posting some clips on Twitter of him working out. And I hit him up and I'm like, yo, did you film a lot? He goes, I filmed some. I said, hey, can you film your next throwing session and send it to me? And he did. And so we were able to evaluate off of that. And so it became trying to be creative in finding out stuff. Now, schools started, telling kids get a tape measure and a scale, and let's show you, your hands or your length, or
do your own combine at home kind of thing.
Your weight. Seriously, you say that, but they were sending kids, hey, here's the combine workouts we want to see. And like everything, right? Before COVID, there were no WebEx calls or Zoom calls to recruit. And now it's a staple of it. And so it was brutal to do. And if you look at the attrition through classes during COVID, it's amazing how many of those kids at places did not work out for a variety of reasons. Imagine you're a kid and you're committing to a school that you've never been to. I mean, which means
it goes both ways, right? Yeah, it's not just the coaches being able to evaluate, but the kids being able to evaluate the school.
And this kids, the school, the campus, being able to have that conversation and sit in a room with a coach for an hour. Listen, it's different. I mean, if you're going to talk to a kid on the phone for a half hour, you don't know half of the time if he's looking at the ceiling or, if all of a sudden it's his time on Call of Duty and he's doing that while he's talking. But when you have him in front of you, you know what he's like and you know what the coaches are like. And it was really difficult. And I feel like there was a lot of misses that year, but you try to do your best. And more importantly than that, like I'm a big believer in just keep learning from it and how do you make it better? And from that, we learned a lot of really good things in evaluation. And one of the things is, there's no substitute for track times for skill guys. And I tell kids this all the time when they ask me, what can I do to get my ranking better? Look at my tape, look at this, look at that. And we have a pretty good idea of what you look like if you watch tape, because you can tell it's not just, are you catching a 60-yard touchdown pass? It's, are you pulling away from the DB for the last 20 yards? Or are they staying even? Because in college, everybody's fast. So you want to see that. But I tell kids, look, I have your tape. I have some of the measurables. So if it's a 10-piece puzzle, maybe we have 7 of the pieces or 8 of the pieces. So we pretty much know what it looks like. But boy, if we had all 10, we'd know what it looks like. And I think, when we try to do things, it's from whether you agree with it or not, our philosophy is we're trying to, 5 stars are first-round NFL draft picks, and 4 stars are kids that are going to play in the NFL. And you can know how it goes if you're number 40 compared to number 140, and you understand the rounds. So we're trying and understand that, if you're a high 3-star, we think there's a really good chance you're going to play in the NFL anyway. But, we're trying to get that complete picture. And most of the guys that play in the NFL are dual sport guys. Like I was at a couple of schools in New Jersey on Thursday talking to some skill kids, and I was happy to hear that they're running track. And a couple of them are 2025s that, have a few offers but don't have a ton of interest, and they're running track because they understand you get just as many offers from running really fast on the track as you will from your huddle film.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us. But one thing we do before we end the interview, we end it with fill in the blank. I'm going to give you 5 rapid fire questions. You say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
As long as we're censored. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, we are fully explicit. So by all means, let it rip.
Yes, we have the parental advisory label on our show. Here we go. Number 1, the best player you ever saw in high school was
Rashawn Gary.
Maryland's starting quarterback next year will be
MJ Morris.
That easy? No.
I mean, you don't bring in a kid like that to have him on
Okay.
the bench. I mean, he's not coming there to be on the bench.
Okay. The campus with the best food is?
Now, I've been doing this a long time. BYU.
Wow.
Was not expecting BYU to bring the flavor.
The best pregame spread I've ever had. A Brazilian steakhouse catered it.
Wow. Okay.
The
The Mormons and the Brazilians.
Well, I guess they don't have any
on?
booze, so they got to eat well. I guess I don't know.
That's a good point. That's a lot of extra energy and resources you can put in the food.
All right. The college team with the best uniforms is?
Oh man.
Now piss off all the fans.
Feeling the pressure. He's feeling the pressure.
No. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but I'm going to one of my childhood favorites, LSU at home when they have the purple jerseys.
Okay.
That's
I
fair.
like it. I do like it.
Yep.
All right, last one. Maryland's final ranking in the 2025 class will be?
I have no idea.
3.
Anybody that knows me knows I don't do those things.
Oh, come on.
I just don't.
We had
I had
to
to try.
You know why? Because if I sit here and say 23rd and they finish 40th, you got to hear that. When you sit here and you say, 40th and they finish 18th, then you got to, you didn't believe in it. To me, it's just wasted energy for me.
There's an easy way around that, Brian. Just say exactly what it's going to end up being.
Yeah. I mean, you have some power in this.
Yeah,
you know?
can make it happen.
Yeah,
just don't be wrong.
If you want it to be 23, it'll be 23. You know what I mean?
That's good.
One more thing we ask everybody comes on the show. Could you do us a favor and say, this is Brian Dohn, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
This is Brian Dohn, and you are listening to IMS Radio.
Thank you so much, Brian. You've been awesome.
Thanks,
guys.
man.
Anytime you need me, let me know. It's been great.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll get you for the Malik Washington announcement.
Hey, I'm good with anything you guys do. Just let me know. Let me know.
Thanks, man.
All right, see you guys.
Brian. Yep.
See you, Brian.
All right. Well, there you go, everybody. Do you feel good about all the people who think the ratings are rigged?
Look, let me just be straight with everybody right now. That was a great goddamn interview by us. We asked some good stuff and we got some good answers, and you're welcome. This is why you need to be paying attention to this show. Because, I like that because, I mean, yes, we could just sit here and go down the list of 2025 targets and ask them how Maryland's doing in that. But, it's more important to me to figure out, what these guys actually do, why it matters, what they're looking for. Obviously, they really care about track times for skill guys. Okay, that's interesting to me. That makes me think, okay, well, maybe if we get some, 6'4" possession receiver, who has great tape and maybe is only a mid-level 3-star, it's okay, well, maybe because he doesn't have a great 40 time, that's why they're holding him back. But that doesn't mean he might not be a good player. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I just like to know the few times we're able to get him and Finkelstein and guys like that on to kind of figure out all right, when you're watching tape, what are you actually looking for? Because it kind of reminds me of what Ralph used to say back in the day, where he's if I can find a guy who runs a 4.4 and has a 3.0 GPA, I'll offer him and we'll figure out what position to play him later. Speed matters if you're looking for skill guys, and clearly that's the thing that matters to them. So that's just an interesting. I think it helps me when I look at these rankings sometimes and think about, okay, well, maybe that's why they got him here, not because he's not a good football player. It's just maybe he's got a great 40 time or what have you.
I do think he came around at the end to admitting a little bit that the program matters. It does have somewhat of a factor. He kind of got around finally at the end. He talked long on every question, but he did get there at the end of mine, and then you
that's what I sensed, because he kind of got there a little bit now, and be does it? I was it actually makes me feel better about the process if the idea is okay, well, it's not that this kid's committed to Penn State, so we're going to bump his ranking. It's just well, if he got a Penn State offer and a Michigan offer and an Ohio State offer in the past month, then maybe we need to be figuring out why we ranked him as low as we did, and getting these committable offers from top 10 programs. That's fine to me. That's not a conspiracy. That's not trying to make James Franklin happy. That's trying to figure out and get your shit right. And I'm okay with that.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this because he's my colleague and I've known him forever, but he does a great job. He mentioned a couple of the message board beefs or whatever with a few of our posters. He shrugs that stuff off pretty happily usually, but he really covers the mid-Atlantic really well. So he's been a huge asset for us.
He's been really good. And the only way, as we found out last week with Walt Williams, the only way to follow a great interview is with a great non-res report. And here we go.
I was hoping it would be some clutch vodka, but I guess not.
This is Wheels with your Inside Maryland Sports non-revenue sports report. The spring season is really starting to pick up steam. Several Terp teams are in action. We're still waiting on a couple more to start, but let's start with women's gymnastics. They're looking to rebound from a loss to Ohio State last week. They will host number 24 Nebraska on Saturday. Wrestling looks to break its 4-game Big Ten losing streak. Most recent loss happening at 10th ranked Minnesota. They host an unranked Michigan State team on Sunday. We're still a week away from baseball starting, but the women's softball team heads out west for a multi-game swing. They're going to face the University of San Diego and UCLA on Friday. They then take on Cal State Northridge and Loyola Marymount over the rest of the weekend. Women's lacrosse is also still about 2 weeks away from its season opening, but the 4th-ranked men's team welcomes 12th-ranked Loyola to CQ Stadium on Saturday. The Terps down 20th-ranked Richmond last weekend at Richmond in double overtime. And that's a wrap on your IMS Non-Revenue Sports Report. Take care, everyone.
We got to find a baseball guy. Do we know anybody who's do we have a Wheels of Maryland baseball?
There's a couple of guys in the
some guys who could be had.
Yeah. Because I'd love to interview Swope, but because we've been friends since we were kids.
Oh God, the math stuff's going to be nauseating.
It'd be so good. Well, I mean, he'd probably just talk about how terrible of a baseball player was, so it would offset that a little bit.
Yeah, we could definitely get him.
But I don't know anything about Maryland baseball, so it'd be pretty. I serve no other purpose other than just to reminisce about baseball trips and assistant coaches buying us booze when we were 16 and things of that nature.
Why hasn't he been here yet, Paul?
Because I wouldn't know what to ask. It would be weird, man. But if we find a real baseball guy,
cross Matt Swope off guest list.
Yeah, damn it! See, I ruined the whole thing.
We had John Sheff about 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
is he still at Virginia Tech or has he moved on?
I don't know, but we had John Sheff on the show. We did.
Was I on that?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. That was weird.
So.
I don't know. 5 years ago, that might as well be a lifetime.
The last time the women last time Wheels provided his intrepid reporting that the softball team was going to the West Coast, we planned a road trip to follow them around, and we forgot. Yes. So I just want to know, spur of the moment, maybe we could just.
Is that this weekend?
Yeah, we'll do a live show.
I'm going to Elon this weekend. Sorry, can't do it.
Gonna have to cancel.
Elon, West Coast. I don't know. We've got to pick one of those, I guess.
Softball.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
can't do it.
I mean, women's softball, man. That's a wild ass sport. I will say.
And volleyball are the two women's sports that I think have the largest potential to kind of grow into something really big.
Women's soccer too, for me too. I think.
Well, they're
kind of already, kind of already there. But man, sometimes you just have ESPN on randomly in the spring, and there'll be a Texas versus Florida or something women's softball game, and man, they are huffing that ball.
They're crazy, and it's different enough from baseball that it's not like when you watch basketball and you watch the two, and
the comparison's tough.
Yes,
but softball is a totally different sport.
Exactly. It translates a lot more. Yeah. There's no 10-foot hoop to differentiate. I would love to see that. It would give us more stuff to write about during the slow seasons. But I don't think it's gonna. I don't know. We'll see.
The one thing softball does that women's basketball doesn't do is they do have different dimensions than baseball. They do.
Yeah. They're chucking that ball from 46 feet.
It's crazy, man.
I mean, you're talking. Let me again. I've faced a 90-mile-per-hour baseball, and it's something that if you haven't, you just don't understand.
Right.
Trying to face a 75-mile-per-hour softball from 46 feet, not 60.
No way.
I can't even. I mean, I think that's why you just kind of throw the bat out there and hope, because
I've always wanted to try it.
All right, Jeff. Any other football recruiting tidbits? I've got a Maryland ranking for you guys to end the show. So any other football recruiting tidbits before we get to that?
No, I mean, signing day came and went pretty quietly, as it does this time of year. Now that we've got the early signing day taking all the sizzle out of it. So they only signed 3 guys, and the other 2 were already known. So, I think it'll be a while before there's probably big news. We all know it's not till June when you have that crazy commitment spree. Before then, we'll have plenty to report about visits or guys who they might get and things like that, because I do think it's going to be I think they're poised to have a really good recruiting class this year. But long story short, no big news.
It is now that signing day, the second signing day has passed. It is kind of assistant coach of Palooza in college football. Do you have any news on that, or is any inkling of what's going on?
I think there could be more changes for sure at Maryland behind the scenes. Reported on the site, a couple of guys who I'm keeping a close eye on, bigger names on the staff, that there could be some changes, but we're playing that by ear right now. I'll report more for subscribers, as soon as things develop. But other than that, it's just the addition of Zahar Abdul-Rahim as co-defensive coordinator. He's already running around recruiting. It's very unusual, actually, because usually when you bring a guy in, you can say, okay, you're Montgomery County or you're DC or whatever. And in his case, he's everywhere. He's a roaming assassin, basically just doing his thing, going after the best players, which is, I think, a very unusual setup, and goes to show how much Mike Locksley valued him and wanted him back. So I think he's going to pay a lot of dividends.
One other thing Dohn said in the fill in the blank, when I said Maryland's starting quarterback next year will be, and he acted like it was a ridiculous question. And for us, though, we've been talking about a potential QB battle. Is that like is he?
I mean, when you don't have anybody proven on your roster and you bring in a guy was a 4-star recruit and won some games at a high level, it's pretty much standard to assume that he's the guy, because the logic is exactly what Brian said. Yeah. He didn't come there not to start. You know what I mean? Like, you might not have promised him the job, but
right,
he's going to feel like he's got a pretty good chance to be the guy. So he's clearly the favorite to me.
At least a leg up, yeah.
Yeah, he's clearly the favorite, but it's not a foregone conclusion. I actually wrote about that this week, what I was hearing about the other two guys, maybe a wild card behind them, and Champ Long, who came in, was he 2 years ago, I think, or this past
I think
year?
He's just a true freshman this year.
True freshman, right? And
he might have been in early last year.
Yeah, so they actually like him. He might have the best arm out of all of them. I don't think he's going to win the job, but anyways, you just assume that guy's the favorite, and he probably is, but it's not a done deal.
Also, just got the idea that Dohn really liked him. Like, he just evaluated him 2 years ago, so it's not totally.
Yeah, and he hasn't spent much time. He doesn't obsess about Billy Edwards going 6 for 20 in the book. He's focused on a million things, so he hasn't done. But yeah.
All right, Maryland rank 'em. I'm going to give you a list of Maryland-related items with some criteria. You're going to have to rank them. Jeff, we'll start with you. There are 6 prospects in the Maryland 2025 basketball recruiting class that are listed as top targets and have Maryland listed as warm. Rank them with most likely to sign with Maryland in alphabetical order. There's 6 of them, so I'll repeat if you need to. But Christian Gerdak, Caden Lewis, Nick Lewis, Chance Mallory, Jordan Scott, and Cam Ward.
Mallory, Jordan Scott, and Ward. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll go Gerdak, number 1, big man from Gonzaga. I think they're in good shape with him. Probably a Maryland versus Notre Dame battle. After that, I would probably go Caden Lewis, guard from Sidwell Friends, who's really good. His stock has been rising. He likes them a lot. They like him a lot. He has been visiting a bunch of other schools, so it's not a foregone conclusion, but I feel like they're in there pretty good. Cam Ward, I would put next. I think they're probably the favorite for him, but now with all these new teams coming in, we'll see. If you're Maryland, you would like him to get done early, both because of all the competition, also because, like I said earlier, they feel like he's the guy locally that everybody respects. So more players, he'll get some movement going. After that, we got, I'd probably go Chance Mallory, point guard from Virginia. They've been on him really hard for a long time. Really like him. Dynamic 5'9" guy. Got a little Anthony Cowan in him. Mostly looks like Maryland versus Virginia. He's from Charlottesville. So, some people have said that's his dream school, but if so, he's had an offer for a long time, still hasn't committed. And then after that, I have Jordan Scott, kid from Reston, Virginia. Christy Winters Scott is his mother. She's the former Maryland star, now does games on TV. They're in there. They like him a lot. He's probably not quite on that Cam Ward level, Like I said earlier, you got Michigan State recruiting him really hard, so they're one to watch for there. And then Nick Lewis, the point guard from Gonzaga, I think things have kind of faded there in both directions. I don't see him at Maryland.
All right, well, basketball recruiting junkies, that was a whole lot of good stuff for you there. Okay, Paul, most likely outcomes for the remainder of the basketball season. Team gives up, doesn't even make the NIT. Team continues to fight, but just can't win enough to get to the NCAAs. Team finishes on a heater and squeaks into the NCAA as one of the last teams. Team has a complete 180, ends up having strong showings in the Big Ten and NCAA tournaments.
I think they continue to fight. You got guys. A guy like Jameer is going to demand that those guys continue to fight. I just don't think it's going to be enough.
Okay, that's number one.
Number one, that's most likely. Second most likely, I think they call it a year. Jameer's too tired, asked too much of him, not get enough help, and they just kind of weasel out. Third most likely, they scrap and find things come together a bit, and they find a way to get in the tournament. And then last is that they go on a miracle run.
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely. I don't know, the give up thing versus the heater and squeak in is the thing that was most interesting to me. Like, which way is that going to go? Because a loss to Rutgers could really do that. But
I hate saying give up because you don't know what their mindset is, and you like to think that that guys at that level are not going to give up on anything. But like I think you could change give up to like just being out of gas. Just you're asking too much of this roster.
Jeff, most snaps at QB next season. We just talked about it a little bit, but also there's been some reports about Champ Long showing well. So in alphabetical order, most snaps at QB: Cam Edge, Billy Edwards, Champ Long, MJ Morris.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty easy. Got to go MJ Morris, Billy Edwards, Cam Edge, and Champ Long.
I guess that wasn't a good question then if it's that easy.
Well, I mean, it's just there's so many unknowns. We
already talked about it too. So.
Yeah, none of these returning guys have ever really had a chance to win the job. We saw Edwards throw in the bowl game. There were some struggles. I think the staff feels like he wasn't put in a great position in that game, so they're not down on him based on those numbers. But yeah.
Paul, best Maryland basketball coach in the 2000s: Gary Williams, Mark Turgeon, Kevin Willard, or whoever comes next. So 4 choices.
As in like the rest of the millennium, or
no, whoever comes after Willard, whoever comes next.
Oh, just the one one guy. Oh man, I mean it's not been great, but obviously it's Gary because the national championship happened in 2000s.
Right? Okay, now here it gets interesting.
And then I hope it will be the next guy, but it will probably be Mark Turgeon. I'm very concerned about the future of this program.
You really don't think Sean Miller is going to kill it?
I would love it if Sean Miller killed it, now enough to get hired at Maryland and kill it here. But I'm worried, man. It just feels like a program with no juice, and you're in a situation with Willard where you're at least stuck with him for 3 or 4 years, and you hope he puts it together. But if he doesn't, I don't know how bad this can get, man. You could be looking at Chris Mack level stuff if things don't go right. I
tweeted earlier. He needs to get Derek Queen, and he needs to hit for the cycle. Hit for the cycle in the portal, literally. One of everything, maybe two of a couple of them. Right?
I mean,
what do they not need?
I mean, they need everything, right? Obviously, it's not like. I mean, it's a situation where you're talking. Even if you just give them Queen and Rice, right? Okay, well that's great, but now you still need a 3-man, right? At least you need another big man, maybe 2. You got
the only thing you don't need is a center, because assuming Julian Reese comes, you do, like you said, you probably need a backup unless one of these 3 guys, these 3 developmental bigs, can become a solid backup. We've seen 2 of them. We haven't seen Pierce. Maybe he's the guy for that backup role. Swanton Roger, I felt like had some potential based on his motor A little kind of sneaky athleticism, but he's really
Just hasn't
struggled with
come
the
together.
fouls, and he
Yeah.
struggled to catch the ball a lot, the hands.
I liked him a lot after last year. I thought
Mm.
he might be able to be a serviceable 15-minute guy, but and you just can't stay on the court.
Nope.
It's bad, man. It's bad. even if you give them Rodney Rice and Derek Queen, it's still really bad.
It's still
All right.
very slim.
Yeah.
Jeff, most likely game for a fall 2024 on location show for IMS Radio. August
need the
31st versus UConn, which is opening day, which would be a candidate. August 19th versus USC would be kind of cool because it's USC and could be a sold-out stadium. November 9th at Oregon.
That's it. That's the winner.
That's my I've got a whole text chain of like 20 people who are already talking about
we're going. We're doing a show at Oregon. Assuming a decent number of fans are going.
Anecdotally, there's a lot of people interested in that trip.
Yeah.
That's not the easiest trip to make.
Yeah. The last one was going to be TBD at whatever bowl game they make, but Oregon, number one over everything.
I think the issue, and we've talked about this offline plenty, is like if we're going to do a live show on the road, we have to know when that game's going to be and where it's going to be to do all the planning. But bowl game, it's too tough. You only got 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. Whereas now, if you're talking about seriously doing something in Oregon, we know where it's going. We don't know the game time necessarily. We've got all the other details we would need. So
you can still have a kick-ass tailgate at a bowl game, though, can't you?
That is true, and we sure
Which leads to the last one. What a great segue, Jeff. Paul, the last one for you, the best IMS tailgater. In alphabetical order, Paul Douglas, William Ginsburg, Ben Page, or Don Sheeler. So Paul Douglas, you're known for your tailgate through the show and everything. William Ginsburg is the guy who's been coordinating all the bowl game tailgates. Ben Page does Old Line tailgate. Amazing, hundreds of people come to every week. And Don Sheeler does all the alumni stuff. A very nice guy, very welcoming, and a big donor to the program and alumni stuff. So go ahead.
All that I am willing to say is that I am dead last in that group. All three of them are heroes for completely different reasons because they do different things in different ways, but we need thousands of them, and we have like 3. And I love them all, and I support them all, and I aspire. I wish I had the energy and the vigor that all 3 of those guys have. I mean, we do a nice little thing, but it's nothing compared to any of what they do. So I'm not ranking. I'm 3-way tie for first. I'm sorry, I'm not ranking any of them, but like I love them all. Old Line's great. Ginsburg is great. Don is the GOAT. Just love them all. Wish we had thousands of them instead of just a couple, because if we did, this program would be a whole different level of thing.
That's a generational thing. Locks needs to have like 5 good years in a row, and then you're breeding more of those people who are willing to invest their time and energy, and
and what you talked about NIL, Jeff, that doesn't happen on its own. It's not like we just, some Maryland donor who's already into football like struck gold in their backyard. It's that Locksley's building a program that people want to support. And that matters. I mean, again, I talked to Larry's talked about this before about wanting more, right? This level's fine, but we need more. And I get that and agree with it. But like being at this level is starting to convince some people to give Mike some money, right? To help him try and build it up to that next level. And that's a necessary step. So love to see it, man.
All right, guys. Very good show. Awesome interview with Dohn. He does an amazing job. He talked so long. I had some more questions for him. I wanted to ask him, how does he decide what games to see and how often does he see him and get into all that? So we can have him back again. I don't know. Maybe it'll be next year for signing day again. I don't know. But
yeah, I feel like we could talk to him for an hour and a half. And I love that interview. If you enjoy football recruiting, like just getting in those guys' heads a little bit and what makes it work. Like it's always been interesting to me.
Yeah, he was awesome. And somebody posted in the chat, and I meant I meant to bring it up and show it. They wanted him to do a question and answer session, a Q&A on the Maryland board like he's done in the past, and he hasn't done it in a while. I forget. Carcosa Terps said that, I believe.
Jeff can get that happening.
So, yeah, Jeff, can you get with Dohn and ask him if he'd be willing to do that on the Maryland board?
Probably. Oh, he disappeared. But
We lost Jeff.
That's a no from Jeff.
He was just texting somebody too, so
Yeah.
maybe.
No, I mean, I will say it's not great timing for that type of thing. Like the best time would be probably in May after they start doing the evaluations for the 2025s. But maybe you'd want to do one just to talk about this class.
Yeah, we could do that. So I don't know what's going on with Jeff. He's a spinning circle right now.
He's talking to Derek Queen.
That's what I said that. Yeah, but yes, that's always the joke. He was texting somebody, and it's always like we make the joke every time, but it's totally true. In the middle of the show, he's looking down, thumbing his phone, and we're like, "Who is it?"
Just kind of waiting for his eyeballs to light up a little bit.
I know, we want to know who it is. So, all right. Now we have officially lost him. It's just you and I. And that is a good time to end the show. Thank you guys so much. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, all of that stuff. It is all very much appreciated. I think we'll be back next Wednesday, right? Are they playing Wednesday next week? I don't even know.
Yeah, we need to look at the basketball schedule. We'll be back mid next week. If it's not Wednesday, it'll be Thursday.
We'll be back.
Probably.
We'll make it widely known to everybody. Thank you very much. This is IMS Radio.